Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm delighted to be here today with Rod Neuenschwander, who is the author of From Crisis to Clarity, and he is the president and co-founder of GIFT.OLOGY, and he's also the managing partner of a consulting firm, Ruhlin Group. Rod, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Look forward to be here.
So, Rod, I first heard about GIFT.OLOGY several years ago. Your co-founder and partner, was sort of the face of your firm, John Ruhlin, and would talk about it. And I heard some podcasts where kind of talked about your unique philosophy around corporate gifts and the power of it. And then I was really saddened to see that John passed away very suddenly, and you were kind of left to scramble and kind of reconstitute and take the full reins of the firm when your co-founder passed. Out of that came the book From Crisis to Clarity. I'd love to hear about this whole story, and maybe you could go back in time and talk about how you and John started this firm.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to, Will. So the story starts 18 years ago when over 18 years ago now, John and I joined forces. But prior to that, so 4 years before that, we were young college graduates, and we had this lunch where we decided that we wanted to buy companies together. We didn't really know each other at the time, but we had one of those 2-hour lunches, and just stars aligned, and we just had that immediate connection. And so we were young enough and dumb enough to think that we could do that. So we, mid-20s, we started down that path. And make a long story short, the first company we were going to buy out didn't pan out. And so I agreed to come in as president to run that. And we didn't know at the time, but it was heading in the wrong direction. So that's how I sort of backed my way into turnarounds by accident. After that, we didn't buy it. It's 2 years later, I went to a larger turnaround, sort of like a hired gun. And after that, John's the whole time we were like, we want to do something together. And by that point, John's like, hey, you know what? We should just merge together. I think the wheels are falling off. And he had a Ruhlin promotion group is what it was called at the time. And so we did, and he wasn't wrong. The wheels were falling off. And so from that, during that time frame, we were trying to figure out what to do with the firm. And our lawyer approached me and asked me if I would be willing to help one of his clients because he knew I had a background in turnarounds. And so I agreed. And to do that, John and I was like, yeah, we're going to do that because, like most entrepreneurs early in the day, we needed the money. So we agreed to do it. And that led to other opportunities. And while we sort of figured out what to do with his gifting company, which ultimately led to GIFT.OLOGY, we also developed another firm that nobody really knows about called Ruhlin Partners, where we partnered with founders of companies that were in some verge of crisis, and we led them through a crisis to turn through the turnaround and then ultimately to a wealth creating event. And so now you fast forward 15 some years later, and we're getting ready to launch our next book project. We waited 7 years. We just want another GIFT.OLOGY out in the market for John. We wanted to really hone in on what would be the right message for us. And so we've been focusing more and more on the relationship. So why do you gift? It's the relationship, and there's more to it than just gifting. And so we had our content creators and writers had sort of built a program around how do you do that the way John does it? How do you build relationships the way John built them? And so that was in beta, and so that was what the next book was going to be about, and called Beyond. We would eventually call it Beyond GIFT.OLOGY. But before any of that could come to market, John passed and died of a heart attack a year ago, August. And so that's where kind of my worlds collided, right? And so at that point, had to do what I had to do for so many other companies. So 2 days after John passed, I had to just remove the emotions and force myself to sit down and be like, hey, I have to build a recovery plan for my company. And so that's what I did. And then, a couple weeks later, as people wanted to meet with me, and when you own a company called GIFT.OLOGY, what do you think they want to talk about? Is gifting. And the irony of that as well is that I suck at gifting. So my team is our experts. They are brilliant at what I built a system that allows people to gift like John, right? And so after one horrible podcast, I remember Charlia from our team reached out to me and said, she asked, "Hey, how'd it go?" And I was like, "Horrendous." I'll never forget the look on her face when I said, like, bury that podcast. Nobody can see that. And so at that point, I agreed to do podcasts that were focused on how we built the brand, and Sarah on our team takes the podcast related to the promotion of Beyond GIFTology and our service offering of GIFTology. And then one day I had a thought on a run. What if I wrote a book? Because John always wanted me to write about our turnaround experiences. And I just like, yeah, I will. I promise you I will someday. And it just, how you just never do it. And then I was like, what if I wrote a book using our current giftology transformation? And I provided the framework for how I did turnarounds, and I used our current situation as our primary case study through that book. And so that's what we did. So From Crisis to Clarity is a real-time case study of and provides a framework to founders of how you sort of work through a crisis. And it also allows me to fulfill a promise I made to John. And then thirdly, it allows me to speak about giftology in a way I can speak to it with authority. So that's how we ended up here. And that's the 5-minute version of 20 years of history.
Tell us a little bit about the state of the company, the structure, the organization, and the role that John was playing, when he passed away, so we
Yeah.
understand what was the gap that you had to fill.
Yeah. So John's our primary face, our primary lead generator. And so, going back to that story, so how did we get from Ruhlin Promotion Group to Giftology? Well, during that time frame, what we were doing some really deep dive into our company. We realized that we served so many industries at that time when John joined together, but we couldn't continue to shotgun marketing dollars across all these industries and all these geographies. And so, but what we realized is that it was really the makeup of the person that we served well. It didn't matter the industry. Like
Mm.
they truly understood how relationships impacted their world, right? Those were our best clients. And so then we said, well, how do we reach them? And so it was that insight and that revelation that allowed, like, well, what if you presented to groups that relationship-oriented people gathered? That's what started down the path for John to go on stage in the first place. And so from there, then obviously, he's a world-class talent. Like he was brilliant at what he did. And so that allowed us to eventually we launched the writing and launching of Giftology itself, which completely transformed our business model, right? But then what that set up was our primary lead generation source was John from stage,
Okay.
right? And so, we were getting ready to position the company to that next phase and that next level, which would lessen that reliance on John from stage with this new platform that we were building, plus then the next book that we were planning on writing. But unfortunately, that never materialized. So at the time of John's passing, we had the framework of what we were leaning into. We had a beta program that we knew worked because we were getting really good positive impact from it and a lot of feedback that was positive, but it was underdeveloped and it wasn't ready yet, and we weren't ready to promote with a new book. So when John passed, at that point, we pretty much eliminated our primary lead generator, our key relationship builder, and our about 70% of our most profitable revenue streams were in some way tied to John.
And for listeners that aren't familiar with the firm, tell us a little bit about, what was distinct about giftology, or what is distinct compared to a more typical generic promotional item type gift firm.
Yeah, so we don't do any promotion. Like nothing that we send out has anybody's logos on it. Everything that we send out is personalized to the person that's receiving it. And so our philosophy is just different. We don't work. We don't do swag. We don't. Our campaigns that we work with on behalf of our clients are targeted towards reaching them at a personal level and their inner circle too. And that's why we focus, most of our gifting opportunities and focus on the kitchen where there's the hub of the house, because we want to be present and to their inner circle as well. And so that's what we've been doing for 15 plus years, is we're helping leaders love on their relationships because we believe everything rises and falls on relationships, right? And so the mechanism we did that was delivering um, highly personalized gifting done at scale, right? And so what we've moved the brand into and how we started this prior to John passing, but we've accelerated basically 3 years of planning into 1 year of execution since John passed, largely because my team's amazing. But what we were able to do then is really come full circle with that, because it's not just gifting alone. So what our writer and partner Mike was able to sort of unpack from the ethos of giftology, but also John's mind, was all the stuff that John did so naturally to build relationships, and build that out in very tangible ways so that others could show up for their relationships like John did, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what that book Beyond GIFTology is all about, and the direction that we've taken. GIFTology is helping relationships become that #1 growth strategy, and for companies. But it's not just gifts alone that do it. There's other elements that allow them to support, just like John would.
What are those other elements?
So we call it the relationship operating system for giftology. It's help identify, help connect, help equip, help track, help celebrate, and scale. Right. So that's the operating system for what we do. And so things like demonstrations of value, how you stay connected with them. Things like, how do you talk about yourself? We call them clarity conversations with your network. And gifting is a part of that operating system, because we can have 1,000 touch point be meaningful on behalf of a leader when you can't have 1,000 conversations, right? And so that's the scope of what we do. But then we also, that training platform, what we built is also the tech to support it from a CRM perspective. So we have a plugin that's coming out later this year. So we will train leaders in their teams on the relationship operating system, and then we have a CRM plugin that allows them to for workflows, for reporting, and things of that nature that match with what we're training them to do. So we're trying to come full circle with that.
Yeah. Could you double click on that and talk a little bit more about the relationship operating system? Give us a bit more of a step-by-step of what that means.
Yeah, sure. Yep. Yeah. I'll actually use a real engagement that I have right here. Standing with them, this is an example of what we do with a client. So we would help them install a relationship operating system. So how we would onboard a client, let's just walk through it that way. So we would have a call to identify their key relationships. So who should we be focusing on? We would help them design their demonstrations of value rhythm. So how do they show up for their relationships in a way that matches that person's natural? So not forcing somebody to do something. If they don't do handwritten notes and they're just not wired that way, well, what do you do? Like maybe it's books, or we help them come up with those rhythms of what makes sense for them. Then we have the core of it is built to what we call the connection plan. So it's like, how are you going to show up for your relationships? And that's built through that connection plan. And then there comes the implementation. So, and then the outcomes, and how do we track those outcomes? And how do we help support you in doing so? And so that's sort of the nuts and bolts of it. And then in this particular case, there is parts where there's an outreach because they have a pretty extensive network. So we're going to be doing 2 gifting campaigns through them in what we call surprise and delight. They're not at your normal birthdays. They're not like, it shows up because I value you, and it's going to show up and it's going to impact your family. It's probably going to be something oriented in the kitchen. It's going to be personalized to you. It's going to have your name on it, not our company logo, or in this case, that company. And so our team handles all of that, and so we support them in all the training on how to actually execute on that. But then our team does on those gifting campaigns. We do everything. So we do the delivery, we do the shipments, we do the personalization, and we do the handwritten notes, and they're all done at scale.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The connection plan, tell me a little bit about that, like how you show up for your relationships. What are some of the different tactics that could be included in a connection plan?
So again, we're going to focus on a couple things related to demonstrations of value. So there's going to be a couple core elements to it. Demonstrations of value are things that you're showing up for your relationships in a way that match how you naturally are. So maybe it's books, maybe you're a reader, like you're going to send books out on a basis. We're going to give you rhythms related to that. We're going to give you like how do you talk about yourself? We call it the big four, like who you serve, who you don't serve, what you do and what you don't do, how you speak about that very clearly. And then we're going to match that in with your normal rhythms of how you show up already. And then we're going to lay it all out on that connection plan. And then now, depending on your situation, some include gifting, some don't. It's not required, but then it'll all be in that connection plan. So we all have as your outsourced relationship operating system, and we help install that for you, but we also help implement that for you. And the way we do that is through that connection plan, and that becomes like sort of the center of the bullseye for both parties, so we can point back to it. It's like, hey, how are we doing to this? And that's why we built the CRM plugin as well, because people are asking for like, well, how do I help install this for my teams? Well, we're going to help you do that, and then we're going to provide you the workflows and the reporting to show that it's happening, right? And then also the results from it, right?
Who tends to be your clients? Is it like a single executive at a company, or will they get the whole sales team as clients of yours, or who are you serving?
So we are serving in most instances, I would say there's two answers to that. Large SMB is a big client of ours, and a lot of times they're privately held. Not they don't have to be. We have clients that are publicly traded. In that instance, we're typically working with a leader of the company or a big division, and oftentimes their sales teams. But we also work with a lot of companies that would have a lot of sales reps, and so they would hire us to help install a relationship operating system in for them. And then we also, lesser so, but then we also work with, founders of companies that are smaller on that scale. They just don't have maybe the network reach, but they're growing. And so we help them sort of like install that early on in the day. And so we can sort of fit that whole range because, we can have our training will match no matter who's that serving. It's just how you show up for your relationships. As the bigger you get, the wider the reach you are, is where gifting really helps that scalability side and helps accelerate those connections, right? So that's the sort of the essence of who we serve and what we do for them.
So the gifting, it seems it's an important element, but it's just kind of one little piece of the overall kind of training and systems that you help provide.
Yeah, yeah. So and early on, that's what we were known for because John would constantly say over the 7 years he's on big stages, was it's not about the gifts, right? He would be like when companies come to us and say, well, we would like to give this instead, we're like, you are focusing on the wrong thing. like we want you to focus on the relationship itself. And so that's why we sort of designed the relationship operating system and why we were coming out with this next book, which eventually became Beyond GIFT.OLOGY, we launched in March, because it maps through all those other elements that John would do for touch points. John had a brilliance of like he would never call you, he would video you every time, FaceTime you every single time, to the point of being annoying about it, right? Because I'm like, oh geez, but I always took it, and but everybody. So at his funeral, we had over 500 people show up and a couple hundred people online. You don't build a network like that without connection. And what he was able to do, that's what our team has mapped out for others to be able to show up for them for their relationships, just like John did. One of their demonstrations of value we teach is making introductions for others.
Yeah.
And John, but done in a certain way. John would do everything through a video call three-way. And it's just a different way to connect with people and connect people that way. And so those are some of the more ground level things that we do.
Let's turn back to your book. So
Yeah.
you kind of set up the situation for us where John, speaking from the stage, was responsible for most of your leads and the most profitable leads. And he has this tragic passing at the age of 44. Tell us, some of the lessons from your book about how did you move on from that, and what were some of the specific things you did to help, rebuild the sales engine and run the company.
Yeah. So, like I said, that we're providing a framework for founders. So I use the same framework I used for all the companies we partnered with that were going through some version of a crisis. Those crises were not their partner dying and their best friend dying and losing 70% of their revenue either. It were more things like chronic underperformance. I call it the hamster wheel. So I define crisis in 4 different ways in the book. The hamster wheel is like chronic underperformance. Like a lot of the companies we partner with have been around for 20 years, right? And they just sort of like existed. And I think there's a lot of companies that just sort of exist. And the other one I call the broken mirror. Like sometimes there's just leadership problems. Maybe the company outgrew the strengths of the founder. Maybe just founder doesn't listen, like or whoever's leading doesn't listen. And then the slow leak is, like just unaddressed things that they know exist, they just don't address until it becomes urgent. And then the last one would be, I call it the fire, where it's like everybody knows, like it's like your business partner of 18 years and your best friend just passed away and 70% of your most profitable revenue. And those are very visible. But this not just doesn't have to be that. But the framework that I'm offering is the same I used for all the companies. I call it the one-page recovery plan. It's made up of 4 very simple things: a clear purpose statement, a go-forward operating plan, a go-forward financial plan, a go-forward team plan. But all has to fit in one page and not in like 8 font either. Like it's gonna be like, and what we're trying to do is focus on the best and the highest priorities, right? So let's just start with the clear purpose statement. Ours is, we help leaders love on their relationships because everything rises and falls on relationships. And why do we believe that? Because we believe relationships take you where marketing can't. Right. So that provides direction for like everything that we're going to do for Giftology is going to be tied to that in some capacity. The operating plan then is what I leaned into. Here we're typically looking for 3 to 5 things. Like what are the things that are going to really move the needle for us and as fast as possible? Well, for us, what we had already started on what our future was going to look like already, right? When we knew that it was resonating because of it was already in a beta program, and we had hired people to already build that, and they were in place, unbelievably talented as well. And so for our operating plan, we focused on that. And what I realized is I have this thing I call the Founders Math Hack. It's like I know a lot of people in your group are consultants, and so but I use very simplified modeling. I don't use a lot. I call it the Founders Math Hack because I just isolate the highest, most important variables. That's what all founders care about. That's all they understand anyway. So it's like I developed this thing. So I looked through it. I'm like, okay. What I realized is that program that we had started in beta and is already out there. We had maybe 75, 100 people in the beta program. Is that I needed that program was our future. And that's what eventually became our relationship operating system. We call it the Rich Relationship Society, and it was a program in that platform. And so, and then using the Founders Math Hack, I realized we needed 600 new members or clients in that program to replace the revenue and earnings that we lost from John from Stage. And so our primary operating plan became Mission 600, right? Replacing it with using 600 new clients and members through that program and that. So, and then our financial plan, I'm just giving you the high levels of it. It was simple. It's like I looked at my founder's math hack. I said, hey, you know what? I can maintain profitability and keep our entire team intact if I could unencumber the company from John and I's compensation for 2 years, right? So then the primary financial priority became how Lindsay and I, John's spouse, could remove our compensation needs from the company for 2 years, giving our team enough window to execute our operating plan. So that was our primary financial plan. Other things included, but that's the primary one. And then the go forward team plan, what I focused on is a lot of times, and this is the amazing part, and one of my regrets, if I'm being honest, Will, is why did it take a crisis for me to realize how unbelievably talented our team is? Right? Because it's almost like you take it for granted, like their job, what they do, and yeah, they do a good job, but like they have so much capability and so much capacity that, and they just rose to the equation. And we had a good culture. One thing to talk about in the book is like, hey, crisis is not the time to build your culture. So if you're concerned about your culture, you better address it. Fortunately, we're going in with a very strong culture, and what ended up happening is we lean heavily on sort of those hidden assets that sort of materialized throughout this process. And so that team has just been remarkable in our ability. And I tell them all the time, it's like, hey, I've never experienced a time where, we've absorbed the body blows since John's passed, right? And have done it in such a fast way, even though I do teach speed, like as part of in the book too. It's like move fast with a plan, because your one-page plan provides direction and guardrails, but you're going to learn along the way. And so I keep telling our team, like, make decisions and execute. Like, if any decision that's made will tank the company, it's mine, not yours. So I just need you to go fast and learn and make decisions. And they are just so unbelievable in executing that. But it's that plan that provides that sort of structure in place. And then we had a really good culture going into it, and that's sort of like utilizing that plan plus moving fast with the plan and learning along the way is how we went from like a training program in beta to a fully launched relationship operating system plan, with now software coming out at the end of this year to support our training on that, all done within 1 year.
Tell me about the reaction to the book and what you've heard back from readers.
My book or Beyond GIFT.OLOGY?
Yeah, your book, your book.
So far, I'm getting really good feedback from it. So I'm not sure if they're my friends. We do have a pretty large network, and so obviously with John, they want to support us, and so but they're also pretty candid people, so I think they would tell me if it sucked. So right now, I'm getting good feedback from it, and I'm proud of it. I'm happy about it as well, because it does, I believe, offer particularly it's written for founders of companies. It doesn't have to be a founder of a company, like leaders in general, but particularly for founders, because that's who we partnered with over all these years. And so believe it provides them a very simple framework to work through some difficult things. And so regardless of what type of crisis they're experiencing, I believe that it'll help them. And so I try to keep it relatively simple. One of the good things about the editing process, and the editors were quick to tell me, it's like, hey, listen, the people that would be interested in reading your book do not have time to sit down and read through a novel. Let's make this condensed, and so this is basically a 3-hour read, but I think it provides them a lot of value in that process. And so so far we're getting good feedback from it.
The book is From Crisis to Clarity, and we'll include a link to the book in the show notes, and we'll also include a link to Giftology in the show notes. Rod, thanks so much for joining today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the time.